Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to 2024. Ricky Dean with the SportzMoose Media Podcast, joined by my buddy Rick Burkett, who is hunkered down in Mobile, Alabama, after the storms we had last night. Rick and them had some damage over there close to their place, and we'll talk about that. We fared well here in the greater Uri Jetto Metroplex as things passed through here, but I never really woke up. I don't know whether I needed the sleep or whether it just didn't get that bad. I know it got windy there for a while at one time because I could hear it whistling, but I did get out and check. And Rick, something that I was glad to see today is it looks like my new roof withstood everything, I guess I should have said. All the shingles are still there. So we did good there. We kept the shingles on the roof, and we've made it through our first big storm of 2024. You guys had some damage close to you, though, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think I just say praise the Lord, thank Jesus for everybody, because there were some tornadoes down. We had some touchdown here close to my house out here in West Mobile, and I think we had 3 or 4 on the ground at one time in West Mobile County, and then the line kind of it's like as you went down in elevation, it's kind of hilly out here, but as you got toward the bay, they kind of dissipated, but then they picked back up again once you got going back up in elevation on the Baldwin County and Escambia County over Northwest Florida side. And there was some pretty good videos today on the Weather Channel and stuff of some damage, trailer park damage and stuff like that. And we actually had some damage here at my house. I had a couple fence panels blown in, and like the one right beside the house in the driveway broke the 4x4 that the 2x4s that the panels of the fence are up against. So had to repair that today, and then it really did look a lot like what it looks like after a tropical system comes through or something like that. A lot of limbs down the yard, and we had power outages and the trees down out here in this particular area of Mobile County, and they had everybody's power back up around noon today.
Yeah, and one thing that I told you earlier when I was coming home is that I actually met a convoy. I mean, it was a good line of probably about a quarter of a mile, maybe even a half a mile of nothing but power company trucks that were headed southbound on Highway 21, coming out of Monroe County, going into Escambia County, and they were north of me here somewhere working, and to be honest with you, I hadn't even taken the time today to sit down and look at the news, so I don't know who got that kind of damage north, possibly in Monroe County or even north, maybe in in Wilcox or somewhere like that, but somebody close to me within driving distance got some downed trees and power outages last night because I met all the power company trucks headed back into Escambia County, Alabama this afternoon.
Yeah, well, like we said, just thank the Lord Jesus. Everybody's made it through safe and sound, at least everybody that I know. So
amen. Just
the damage is just something we all have to deal with time to time, but that, and it's time of year, and we'll have some more of those as it goes along. It's not something we're not used to here on the Gulf Coast.
Well, and I was talking to my son Cooper today. I said, I didn't really hear anything last night, and I mean, but I was prepared because when I went to bed, I didn't actually go to bed in the bed. I slept in the recliner, and I stayed in there. I put my flashlight by the thing, and I had my phone settings where I could get all the notifications. And rather than sleeping in my boxer briefs last night, I did put on a pair of sleep pants so that I could look like all the chunky chicks that go to the Dollar General in your pajama breeches, because the last thing I wanted to happen last night was to get hit by a tornado and then all of a sudden the news crew be in the front yard and I'm having to hunt a pair of pants in the dark to go be interviewed and tell them that it sounded like a freight train coming through, like the lady in the moo-moo always does. So I didn't want to be that chick. You know what I mean? I wanted to be prepared. So yeah, I did wear my sleep pants to bed last night with a pair of shoes right there on the table beside the chair. That way, if you got to get up and go, and run because there's a nader outside, then you need to be prepared to go. But like you said,
I would pay money to see you do that tornado interview in your moo-moo.
Well, hey, I'm not above wearing a moo-moo. I'm just here to tell you. But anyway, yeah, praise the Lord that we didn't have to go through that, and praise the Lord I didn't have to be the cat interview at daybreak, because it sounded like a freight train outside when it came over. But anyway, I'm glad, and I hope that everybody did make it through. And we're making light of what could have been a serious situation, and we are, because we made it through it, and thank God we did. But anyway, let's talk about things going into the new year. The SportzMoose Media Podcast, we've done so much football, particularly high school football, over the past several months, all the way back into August, and we made it through the season. Then we made it through the first of the year. We wished everybody a Merry Christmas. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And now that we're in the first part of the year, I'm getting ready, of course, just had our first meeting last Sunday. I'm getting ready to umpire some high school softball, as I still umpire high school girls softball in the Alabama High School Athletic Association level of play. Of course, I do some other things, some young kids baseball and stuff like that at the Little League and Cal Ripken age group, 10, 11, 12, those ages. So I got a lot of stuff coming up. It's fixing to get to be my busy time of the year again. Even though football's over with, I got to have something to keep me busy the rest of the time. And one thing that you and I have already talked about that we're going to try to do a lot of this spring and summer is going out there and drowning a cricket or 12, and enjoying the outdoors, enjoying what God has provided us to enjoy here on this earth until we transition to the next place. And of course, the thing is right here in our area of the country, we've got absolutely beautiful places to go hunt and fish. Of course, I'm surrounded by hunters right here, right now, where I'm at, because we're in the middle of deer season. As a matter of fact, I don't know where all those guys are. Of course, it was after dark, and I know it matters to some people that because you're not supposed to hunt them after dark. But anyway, I actually, when I was coming in a while ago, I had to stop in the middle of the road right down from my house because I had to let the deer cross the road. And I mean, there were a couple of does and a bunch of little yearlings and stuff like that, but they all crossed, and there were probably 7 or 8 of them. As a matter of fact, out in my vehicle right now, I just picked it up today. I've got a new game camera that I'm going to put out behind my house when I throw some corn out there. All right, game warden, not to shoot them over the corn, okay? I'm not going to do that. I just want to take the pictures, and that's why I bought the game camera, is because I want to see what I can get and draw them up right here into my backyard here on Jim Snow Road in Monroe County, Alabama. But one thing that we did talk about, one thing that's exciting to both of us is as we ease over into spring and the weather starts getting a little warmer. Of course, we're slap dab in the middle of winter right now, but there will be some warm days, and of course, we're going to have a lot of rain like we did last night for about the next month and a half or so. But sooner or later, this weather's going to kind of play out, and it's going to be fishing season again. And as a matter of fact, you and your bride just recently went fishing and picked up some good bites on some crappie.
Yeah, that's right. And this time of year, anytime you can get out, and it's safe to do so. To people, a lot of times they want to use their boats and get out and go fishing in the spring and the summer, and then they just kind of. But, the fish are animals. They have to eat and have sustenance like everything else, and they don't stop eating in the fall and the winter. They just go to different places to do it. And, as the water temperature cools down, they're cold-blooded animals, so that their metabolism slows down, so they don't eat as much. But they still have to eat. And you get a nice day, and you can get out. And just like you said, we live, and I've lived all over the country. We live in probably the best area, and when I say area, I'm including Mississippi and Louisiana, Northwest Florida, Alabama, and Georgia, and Tennessee, and this area. But really, the Gulf Coast area of places that I know of, and even places I haven't lived in, I've fished and hunted all over the country. Also, the Gulf Coast is, in my opinion, is the best, and you can go fishing almost anywhere. I mean, you can find a creek close to the any road where there's a bridge, and you can catch fish. And you downsize your gear and take some worms or crickets, like you said. You can catch bluegill and sunfish, brim, almost wherever you go. Janet and I went over to Mississippi the other day, and it was cold. I think the high that day was 54. There was no wind. It was a cool day. Last Wednesday, I think, if I'm correct on that, over to Mississippi to a little Oxbow Lake over there in the wildlife management area off the Pascagoula River, and beautiful day. And there's lots of places like that around here too. You don't have to go to the typical places that we all know of, the common landings and places like that. There's lots of other places you can go to. But where we went, we didn't catch a ton, but the ones we caught were big, and it was enough for a supper. And I filleted them all for me and myself, Janet, and Kaylee, my daughter. And had a nice little fish fry. And and some days you may go in the winter and not catch that many. There are days, and if you go in the winter, that you may not. But another good winter species to go after is speckled trout. And if you go and look in some of the deeper holes right now, and then if the day warms up, you can catch them out in the flats. It's speckled trout, and white trout, and flounder and sheepshead for inshore fishing. There's just there's all kinds of places to go and catch and enjoy the outdoors and that God gave us, and the great sport of fishing, which is second to none, as our friend Gene, the fishing machine, says on the YouTube channel. So.
Yeah, well, and
you don't need a boat either. I mean, you really don't need a boat.
Well, and that's what I was kind of going to allude to is, one of the things you and I have talked about, and one of the things that we want to do with this podcast, later on, is basically we want to prove to people that there are places that you can go and just sit on the bank and just enjoy God's creation, and just sit on the bank with very little money tied up into it. I mean, you need a rod and reel or even a cane pole. I mean, that would be cool to me. That's one thing that we need to do. We need to go old school, sure enough, one time, and we just need to go to a little farm pond or a creek with nothing but a cane pole. And you don't need all this fancy equipment, and you don't need these fancy lures, and you don't need to know how to tie a fancy knot. I think my pastor Joshua Long put it best one time. He told me, he said, if you can't tie a knot, just tie a lot. And so you just got to get the hook to stay on there, and so you just get, you just get on there, and you just, it's not fancy smancy. I mean, it's just getting out into the outdoors and just being able to enjoy God's creation. And then not only that, I mean, there's a lot of satisfaction with going out there, setting out on a quest to basically catch your supper, and being able to do that and then come home and clean it up, and just the satisfaction of doing that, and then being able to cook it up yourself. And that fish, doesn't matter how you cook them. I mean, they're just hard to beat. I mean, they're just tasty, and it doesn't matter whether it's brim or bass or catfish or whatever. Just whatever you catch, clean it up, fry it up, and just have a good time. And it's like I've heard you say before. You have to you go fishing, and then when you get through and you've got an icebox full, you just have to praise God for that icebox full of fish, because that's Him providing for us, like He says He will do in the Bible. He will provide us with what we need. And so when we go out, hey, there are going to be days, like you said, there's going to be days even in the summertime that you go out and the wind may not be out of the right direction or whatever, or the tides may be messed up, that you're not going to have as good a day that day as you do each and every day. But when you go out, just being out there is just so much of a great time, and just like I said, just being able to enjoy what God has created and provided for us here on this side of heaven to be able to enjoy is just incredible.
Yep, amen. I agree, 100%.
But yeah, and we're going to get into more and more of this as we get through. Get closer to the spring. Of course, like I say, right now we're headlong into deer season, and of course it's cold. Boy, I would hate to be knowing that I had to get up in the morning and head down the river. I don't think I'd want any part of that water in the morning, because I don't know how in the world you would get yourself warm enough to stay in a boat going down the river in the morning. But because it's cold out here in the country right now. It was about 40 degrees just a few minutes ago when I walked outside with Shuggy to let him go out and take care of his nature needs himself, and he came back in a hurry. Shuggy said, "No, man, it's okay. I'm good." He made a quick trip out and back. He didn't extend his stay out into the yard this evening, but it's just going to be a good time getting out and being able to do things and talk about things that we want to. And of course, eventually we're gonna roll this thing back into some football news and everything as well. College football just ended last night. Congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines as they defeated Washington last night, a game that I really never got into, and everybody knows why, because I'm an Alabama fan, and of course, we didn't make it, and I mean, I watched a little bit of it, but it was just hard to watch because, I mean, really, with Washington not being a Southeastern Conference team or a team that you really any of us know that much about, other than they had a very good quarterback, but he wasn't good enough by himself to beat Michigan. And as Alabama fans will attest to from the quarterfinal game, from the game that Alabama played against them in the Rose Bowl, Michigan was a good football team. I mean, they're deservingly the national champion, no doubt about it. They earned their right to hoist that trophy.
No, that's right. Alabama played a good game, but I think, just from watching the game, to me, the impression was the better team won. Their quarterback, McCarthy, is an outstanding quarterback, gets rid of the ball really quick. And so Alabama lost in overtime. Some of the same problems that, and those problems are part of the game. You can't go, well, if this hadn't happened or if that hadn't happened. Well, if the other team hadn't scored more than you would have won. I mean, at some point, you just have
bottom line is that's it.
The bottom line is they played better than we did, and they had more yards than we did, and they won the game. And really, Washington played a pretty good game through three quarters, but by the end of the third quarter, it looked like Michigan was taking control of the game, and they did. And Michigan, 15-0. Won their conference, beat a good Ohio State team, beat Iowa in their conference championship, beat Alabama, and then beat undefeated Washington. So congratulations to the Michigan Wolverines. They worked hard for it, and they deserve it.
Oh yeah, they and they're going to be good again next year. I know there's a lot of questions about whether Jim Harbaugh is going to come back and be their coach next year, but I don't think it's really going to matter who their coach. If he moves into the NFL, I know there's some NFL job openings that they said that he is interested in, and he's, I'm just wondering, and I know that, I guess coaches, Nick Saban found out the same thing. Nick Saban ventured into the pros from LSU and went to coach at Miami, and I think his heart was always at the college level in the college game, and I'm wondering whether Harbaugh might kind of take that same route. He may be drawn by the bright lights and the stardom of being an NFL coach, but I'm wondering just just the little bit that I've seen of Harbaugh, he's more of a rah-rah type guy. And I don't think that rah-rah coach really plays well on the NFL level because it's so much like a business. But, I'm thinking that his personality, just me personally saying this, I think his personality is more suited to the college game, and he may leave and go, but I think before it's all said and done, he'll find his way back into college football.
Yeah, I don't think he's going. I think for a lot of the reasons you just enumerated, he's already coached in the pros before. He coached Stanford. Remember when he was coaching Stanford Cardinal years ago before he coached in the pros. And he's 60 years old. Michigan's paying him essentially pretty close. They're in the range of what any pro team would pay. So,
and not only that, I mean, didn't just a couple of years ago, he actually took a pay cut at Michigan, and voluntarily did that. Now, after winning a national championship, in order to keep him, the money truck's probably already stopped at his house and actually may be parked in the driveway. I mean, they're probably going to dump some more money on him before it's all said and done.
That's right. The only thing they don't want him talking. They don't want him to be distracted by the NFL teams, and I think that's their condition on the $125 million that they offered him or something like that. But like him, don't like him. To me, he's a family man. He loves his family. He's a good church-going Christian man. I just don't think there's much allure for the NFL thing for him there anymore. And so I mean, but he could. But if he leaves Michigan, it's because he's gotten sideways with some of the higher ups and the booster clubs and the financial supporters of the program. Because I think he played quarterback at Michigan. He just won a national championship at Michigan. I don't think he wants to deal with NFL players for the same reasons you were talking about. Nick Saban doesn't want. One of the reasons he decided to leave the Dolphins and come to Alabama, a lot of it was money and various things. A lot of it was when you're coaching in the NFL, you're coaching a union professionals. And people, but they're not like real union. But I beg to differ. If they're in a union, then they're in the union.
Yeah, they're union.
And you can't, yelling at them doesn't work. Doing the things that you would do to motivate college kids. Discipline doesn't seem to work. I mean, so I mean, and there's nothing wrong with being in a union. So don't get me wrong. There, I worked in a union environment for 36 years, and they're some of the finest, greatest people on earth. But it's not for everybody to be a boss in a union environment. And it didn't bother me much, or I would have went and done something else. But I don't think Saban likes it. No, I don't think Harbaugh did either. So there's just lots of reasons for it. I think he'll be staying right there at Michigan.
Well, if he does, I think he's good for college football. And I will say this I mean, he's a controversial cat. I mean, he kind of he marches to the pace of his own drummer, and that may cost him somewhere along the way. Now, there's still some stuff hanging out there about this whole sign stealing deal and all, about what his involvement was. Of course, he served 2 different suspensions over that. Ended up, out of a 12-game or a 15-game season, he was on the sidelines or at the house for 6 of those, based on his involvement in this whole thing about the sign stealing. And I don't think that's over with yet. But the thing is of course, even if it is not over yet, he can still look in the trophy case and there's his natty. I mean, they're not going to take the national championship away from him because he may have hid his involvement a little bit or not been all up front about how much involved he was in having that situation come around him. But anyway, he's got the national championship. They deserve to be there. We've already said all that, and so more power to them. and next year, we talked about this whole thing with it being a 4-team playoff, and people were grumbling about which teams were in it, and poor Florida State, they got left out. Of course, Florida State got the hair ripped off them down in the Orange Bowl by Georgia, and people say, well, they had all these kids that opted out. Well, those kids could have opted out whether or not they were in it or out of it. I mean, the thing is that Georgia went down and made a statement in that game, and Georgia said, you know what, we could have been one of the 4 rather than maybe Washington or even Alabama for that matter.
Right.
Georgia made that statement, and I'll tell you what, next year is going to be an interesting year when they expand this playoff into 12 teams, and you've got a couple extra games thrown in there. And I've heard a lot of talk on sports radio, different things. What's it going to do to the rest of the bowls? Well, for one thing, we got too many bowls now anyway. There's like 43 bowls. So if you double up 43, that's 86. You've got 86 teams out of 130 some odd teams that are playing Division I football. 6 and 6 teams should not be going to a bowl. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you talk about a participation trophy, you're just 6 and 6. Or in the case of some teams, if they don't have enough 6 and 6 teams, they'll let a 5 and 7 team go to.
Yeah, there was a couple of 5 and 7 teams.
There were, and that's, if you got a losing record or you're only 500, you ought not be in a bowl anyway. What you ought to be doing is you ought to be spending that time in your bowl practicing out recruiting, because obviously you got problems on the field right now that you need to fix, and it would just be better. I mean, I remember back in the day, and of course we're aging ourselves right now, but when you talk about things the way it used to be, bowl games used to be a reward for having a good year. Now you can have an average year and still make a bowl, and of course, you go to a place like the Birmingham Bowl and you sit and play in front of 23 people, and they take commercial breaks and everything else, and I don't know, if I was an advertiser, and I wouldn't spend my money advertising on a bowl game that people aren't even watching on TV, because you've got 2 6 and 6 or a 7 and 5 and a 6 and 6 team playing each other. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. There's too many bowl games, and it seems like every year, there's 1 or 2 added, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So, with all that being said, it's too cold to fish, and it's too windy to hunt. And well, I'll tell you what you doing tomorrow. Anything?
Well, yeah, tomorrow I've got I've got to finish cleaning up my yard from some of this mess around here. But I know what you're doing tomorrow. You're going to the
I got a stinking doctor's appointment tomorrow. Yeah, I got to go to the doctor tomorrow, and it's not even it's the same thing. It's just like these bowl games that are with 6 and 6 people. When you go to the doctor, and it's either my 2 favorite doctors to go to is the skin doctor and the dermatologist and the cardiologist, because the skin doctor and the heart doctor, they have the best looking nurses. I'm going to the podiatrist in the morning, and I don't understand what it is, and I'm not even going to call the name of my doctor, because I don't want people to go in and check out the nurses and let them know that I talked bad about them. But podiatrists just don't have the hottest nurses. I mean, I guess it's, we've talked about this before, and I guess they're so far down the list on kind of the body part exchange system until they just don't draw the hot nurses to the podiatrist office. I don't get it. But anyway, I've got to go in, and basically what I've got to do is go pay a $50 copay for a pedicure tomorrow. Is basically what I'll do, because that's about all that happens. And I started going to the podiatrist because I've been diabetic since I was 14 years old, and so I have, issues that I want to kind of head off with my feet. And so that's one thing that the podiatrist does is he looks and talks about my feet and then charges me a $50 copay and does a little pedicure for me, and then I'm in and out of there in probably less than 30 minutes. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's not an exciting trip to the doctor. Not nearly as exciting as going to the dermatologist or the cardiologist.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I mean, they don't even hook you up to any machines in there. I mean, it's like you go in and it's a guy with a set of gloves and a toenail clipper. I mean, hook me for $50. Hook me up to something that beeps. I want to hear some beeping. I mean, do something for me. But
next time
anyway,
I go to the cardiologist, instead of Janet taking me to sleep, you can go with me, because when I go to the cardiologist, there's always something going on, man. And I can tell you, I'd have to say on average that the cardiology nurses, at least at Cardiology Associates, they're very attractive, but they're very professional. And there's always plenty of whirls and whistles and beeps going on, especially if I'm in there. Like that old song said, my heart beats to a different drum for sure.
Yeah, well, no doubt. Yeah. And I mean, because I remember when you were in there having your pacemaker put in. I mean, gee whiz, I wish you would go back more often. I mean, I would go sit with you every time you go to the heart doctor in the hospital. I'm going to go sit with you, because I mean the nurses just keep coming in. And
they did appear that way.
And the next one's better looking than the last one was. I don't get it. I mean, but it's worth the trip. I mean, yeah. I just enjoy the trip, and I mean, and then you're there too, you and Janet. I get to talk to y'all, but anyway, there's always. Everybody's got an angle, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a reason to go for whatever. You have to find the reason. But
that's right. Yeah,
so I'm just going, but I am just going to the podiatrist. And then what is really bad about the whole deal is not only is it a trip to the podiatrist in the morning, I've got to leave the house like at 6:30 to make it to the 8 o'clock appointment. So I mean, I'm getting out of bed early and just it's hard to get motivated to go. It really is.
Well, be careful, especially with it being cool. And I've noticed myself in the evenings coming back from coming back from Mississippi, that the deer are really moving around. It's been a cool year. It hasn't been a brutally cold year, but of course, the deer like to move around when it's nice and cool, and they don't like to move around when it's been raining too much. So during storms, they usually, they
hunker down.
They hunker down around the base of a tree somewhere in the bushes, and so they'll be out and about in the morning, and you'll be leaving the house just about daylight. So
yeah, well, the boys next to me, I mean, when they're leaving, going to get in there, and it all depends on the wind in the morning whether or not they're going to go be going and getting in those tree stands or shooting houses in the morning, but yeah, they usually. They're leaving the camp house at about 5 o'clock, and I usually leave for work at 6. So we kind of dodge each other a little bit. So they'll be out and about. But you're right. But around here, I don't see deer as often early in the morning as I do. Like I said earlier when I came in, and this was between 6 and 6:30. I promise you, I had to stop the vehicle in the road and let the deer walk from one. I mean, they were crossing, and there were probably easily 8 to 10, and I had to stop at 2 different crossing points because they're coming out of a peanut field, or that was peanuts, and they're crossing the dirt road to get into the woods where out here where I live. So yeah, I mean they're out and about, no doubt about it. And you're right. You do have to be careful, because it's happened to me before. They will tear a vehicle up.
Yeah, they sure will, especially on 59, 225. I mean, they just do. I mean, I had several highways that as management that we didn't want our trucks going down after it got dark. They were just off limits because of the amount of deer that. I mean, and when a deer, if they would tear up and almost total, a big diesel tractor. And so you can imagine what they do to a smaller vehicle.
Oh,
and of
yeah.
course, a lot of people are injured and killed by deer every year. So just have to be careful and be deer aware out there. So.
Yeah, one thing that I did see that did more damage than a deer one time is I remember when I worked as a sheriff's deputy for Escambia County, I had to work a wreck one time where a lady hit a cow at about 10 o'clock at night, and it was a solid black cow had gotten out of the pasture and was standing in the middle of the road, and this lady never saw it, and thank the good Lord she was uninjured because she was wearing her seatbelt. Now, I do think that she got rudely introduced to an airbag, but the airbag and everything in the seatbelt saved her. But the cow didn't fare very well, but the vehicle fared worse. In that battle, the cow was declared the winner. But anyway, yeah, I mean that was rough. Anything out there on the road, I mean, you just have to be careful, and not only that, be careful of other people too, because I mean, dude, there's some people drive aggressively these days, and the older I've gotten, I guess I've just gotten softer in my old age. I mean, I drive like an old guy, I do, and I don't apologize for it, because I'm 60 years old, I'm still here because I drive slower now, and I'm just trying to make it to point A to point B as safely as I can. But you got some people out there, and I don't know why, but there's two states. Have you ever been out on the interstate? Two states that seem to be the most aggressive. One of them's Georgia, and the other one's Texas. I don't know why these people that are coming through Alabama are such in a dang big hurry to get back to Texas, because I've been to Texas. There's really not much there to get back to see, but there, and especially when you're driving through Alabama, slow down and enjoy Alabama just a little bit. And you people from Georgia, please, y'all just go ahead and drive crazy, because we want y'all out of Alabama and back into Georgia as quick as we can get you there.
Yeah, I think that with the Texans, they do drive fast. I lived out there for 5.5 years, and it's just a lot more wide open spaces out there, and but really the worst drivers typically are the ones from the Houston or Dallas or Austin.
Oh, Dallas is terrible. I never will forget I think I was 15 years old still had my learner's permit, didn't even have a license yet, and we were going, my grandfather and I, J.C. Keel, we left Atmore because I had an aunt that lived out in Oklahoma, and it was my mama's sister, and she lived out there, and so we were going out to visit them, and my grandfather took me along, and I never will forget, it was a little silver, it was like a Datsun or a Toyota, I think it was a Toyota, maybe a little compact ride that we were in. I think it was even like a little station wagon, and it was a stick shift, and my grandfather made me drive because he didn't want to drive, and of course Pawpaw was teaching me to do things like pawpaws are supposed to do with their grandsons, and so he was going to teach me how to drive, and I was going to learn that going from Atmore to Oklahoma. Well, when we got to Dallas, I got the kind of the baptism by fire in the traffic of Dallas, Texas, and I found out in a hurry that you either drive fast like everybody else or they will run you over. And so yeah, that's
that's true.
Yeah, you have to when in Rome, you drive as the Romans, and when you're in Dallas, you drive like the Texans. You got to get on with it, or you're going to end up being a statistic. But anyway, well, that's all I had tonight. I mean, I think we covered a lot of topics, and maybe a couple of them were legit. Most of it was just chit-chatting, but it's been a lot of fun anyway.
Well, that's all right. I mean, it's a new year. Well, like I said, we got lots of big things coming up. Hopefully, we can still do one of our podcasts while we're fishing. And
we're going to be able to do that.
Might even film one. And
well, I'm working on that right now too. I'm working on a software where I can go in and do some video editing so that we can do do podcasting, do some video podcasts that we can actually put on YouTube and on Facebook and stuff, and so that'll be cool. And I mean, even though I will say this, I'm going to be the first to admit I'm not going to speak for Rick. I'm just going to do this to myself. I do have a face that's made for radio. It's not really made for TV. But anyway.
Hey, look, Paul Feinbaum made it, so we can make it too.
Well, yeah.
And besides, we may have some guests on there, invite some of the nurses from the podiatrist office and cardiologists and things like that. So who knows?
No doubt.
We'll make it interesting somehow.
No doubt. Yeah, it'll be fun. But anyway, yeah, I mean, this has been a good time tonight, and we hope that y'all will continue to tune in and listen as we are rapidly approaching. It's not going to be long. We will have 1,000 downloads. That's kind of our goal. That's our first big landmark situation. Of course, we keep adding and keep adding and keep adding every time. So if you hear something on here that you like, or if you just think it's funny, or if you think that, hey, these guys are a little entertaining or whatever, then certainly invite your friends to listen in and share the podcast with them. We're available anywhere that you can get podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on Podbean, just a lot of places. Anywhere that you can get a podcast, you can find this. As a matter of fact, I'm even putting it on X and TikTok and places like that now. So it's available. So just when you see us out there, it's called the SportzMoose Media Podcast, and by all means, tune in and listen, and we'll be glad. And don't be scared to comment now. Let us know what you think, good or bad, because the only way we're going to get any better is for you to let us know what you think about what we're doing. So there you go. Rick, it's been fun, buddy.
Yep, it has been, as always.
Hey, maybe we can get together tomorrow after I go and see the homely looking nurses, and maybe we can have a cup of coffee at the Cracker Barrel tomorrow or something.
There you go. Give me a call.
I will.
We can do that.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
All right, buddy. All right, man. Good night.